So the governor has painted the starting line on the track. Where does all of this go from here? As Crain's Detroit Business put it this week, tax cut fever is already sweeping Lansing, but should it? Let's talk about it with a group that is very dialed in on all of these decisions. From Crain's Business Detroit, executive editor Kelly Root is with us there. So is Kevin Johnson, the president and CEO of the Detroit Economic Growth Corporation. Jeff D'Onofrio is the president and CEO of Business Leaders for Michigan, and the president and CEO of the Detroit Regional Chamber, Sandy Barua, is here as well. Gang, thanks very much. What a group I've got here today. And Kelly, let me start with you since I've already quoted your publication. I suppose it was really interesting to see already some agreement that some of this money should be going back to the people who supplied it in the first place, but clearly not all of it is going to. This is a great debate, I think, Kelly.
It is. We have a story up right now, actually, by Chad Livengood, our senior editor, that is, a deep dive into what kind of jobs we should be chasing with this money. The state is sitting on a very large pile of money. Some of it is federal stimulus money. Some of it is, revenue, general fund surplus. And the question is, where does it go? And we are at kind of an inflection point on deciding whether we should be, allocating money for knowledge economy jobs that helps fuel the technology behind EVs or manufacturing jobs. Clearly we need to be funding both, and they're both important. But, there is time right now to really think philosophically about where we're headed with this money.
Kevin, I can't find very many people that don't think that we have to do something about American infrastructure. We watched almost on cue another bridge collapse happen in Pittsburgh on Friday. And yet, how to pay for it, how much of it we should be setting aside for those days still seems to be a really dramatic political divide.
Well, it's interesting that we're talking about infrastructure. And I know just by pure of my experience that corporations invest in communities that invest in themselves. So at the same time, we're talking about, driving more innovation and manufacturing into our city and in our state. We can't expect that we're going to attract anything or retain anything in this state when you have crumbling infrastructure. So I think, there's no politics in my mind about infrastructure, because every politician I know, they drive to their places of business, they drive to work, they use the same roads that we do. So why there's a political debate is beyond my imagination. This is pure in delaying what I think to be an already deferred maintenance program for this entire state. So you can only defer the maintenance for so long before you can get to a point where you're talking about bringing in investment and the infrastructure is crumbling. Well, that's counterproductive and it's counterintuitive to the type of jobs that we're trying to bring into the state of Michigan. So I don't want to even talk about politics when it comes down to infrastructure.
Interesting, though, Jeff, because we certainly haven't seen passage of Build Back Better, because there is mass disagreement over what constitutes, in this day and age, infrastructure and what needs building back and improvement, and what is better left to other ways, I guess, of moving forward.
Yeah, I think what's overarching important, what you hear from Kelly, what you hear from Kevin, and what you hear from, I think, a lot of people in the business community, is what is the business environment? What do we actually have as talent base? How are we closing the talent gaps that we need? Do we have the infrastructure, the water, the sewer? Tennessee is putting about a third of their ARP dollars into water and sewer right now because they're growing at such a fast rate. I think that's what we've got to look for is our future, because we have this unique moment in time where we face a lot of challenges as a state, but we also have a lot of resources to take on those challenges.
Sandy, in fact, that's a great point. We now have a real ability here to compare and contrast what happened with Ford and what happened with General Motors. Can you kind of break down for me what you see as the difference in those outcomes?
Well, one is the state was ready for General Motors. It wasn't ready for Ford.
Simple as
that. So thanks to a lot of us, frankly, on this in this meeting this morning with you, Devin, we made tremendous progress in December that got us to the GM announcement last week. The question is, are we ready for the next announcement? And the answer is we're really not. We still don't have in Michigan a long-term economic development strategy. We don't have a long-term dedicated funding source. We have a great new leader at the MEDC, and I really applaud the governor for hiring Quentin Messer. But do we have the protocols and the processes in place that will last from governor to governor, as opposed to what we have been, which is every time we get a new governor, we get a new approach to economic development, unlike, say, Tennessee and Texas and South Carolina and others. And that's putting us at a real economic disadvantage when it comes to attracting new jobs for the next generation of workers in Michigan.
Well, really interesting, Kelly, that we saw such bipartisan glee over what happened with General Motors on Tuesday. Then we saw a fair amount of agreement over some of the governor's first offerings here on this, particularly for instance, getting rid of the pension tax. And yet, isn't the reality here that we're in an election year and the kind of infighting that Sandy's talking about is, of course, going to pop up again?
Absolutely. Everybody wants tax breaks. There's no one that is, not in favor of paying less taxes. And the interesting thing in the short term with this money and the proposals that the governor is putting forward is, where do they come together? The businesses generally right now are looking for more broad-based tax cuts, corporate income tax, that kind of thing. The governors are more targeted, but they're going to have to come together on this because there are a lot of there's still a lot to be done here. And one of the other issues in regard to the businesses right now is a lot of money is going to GM, and lots of folks are asking, where's our part of that? Brian Calley from SBAM was talking to us, the Small Business Association of Michigan was talking to us this week, and he basically said it's time for a reset to come together and figure out where more money can come to smaller businesses as well as the big giants.
Kevin, especially given what's happened over the last 2 years, there's a lot of small businesses that aren't even still at the table to have the conversation, and they feel very left out when they watch these kind of, I don't want to, gift baskets, I guess is what we'll call them. I mean, it is the way business is done today, but what do we do to better support the small businesses that are still left?
Well, I mean, Devin, there's a matter of priority, and I think you can support large enterprises like the GM. And I think you can prioritize and take care of Main Street at the same time. It can't be one playing one against the other, because that's how we got to where we are in the first place. I think the priority for the state of Michigan, and it's certainly a priority here in Detroit, is making sure that we have the resources that we need to invest in small businesses, because they're the ones that support the neighborhoods. That's where neighborhoods around the city of Detroit get their goods and services. And, even here at DEGC, when we had the relief grants coming through the state, we pushed out $15 million to street level entrepreneurs to help stabilize their businesses. That's what the small business community wants to see, that they have access to resources, that whether it's coming from the state or the federal government or even at the local level, like programs like Motor City Match. We are committed to that endeavor. And when you can show them that you're committed to it, it doesn't get into GM got this and we're not getting that. It's showing them that we're willing to invest in them as well.
Jeff, I want to talk about that pension tax for just a minute. Brian Dickerson wrote an interesting piece on Friday that said, naturally, the one area that we find agreement already between the governor and Republicans is over a bad idea, at least to his way of thinking. We shifted some responsibility off of businesses 10 years ago and put it on retirees. Should that tax go?
I think, these tax cuts should be on the table for consideration. I mean, there is a lot of money in Lansing right now. A lot of it, though, is one time, though. And I think we have to look at it through the lens of, what are we doing as trade-offs? Where are we investing in talent, in closing talent gaps? Going back to what Kevin was talking about with small businesses, I don't know a small business, a medium-sized business, or a large business that isn't having trouble finding talent right now.
Yeah.
The state of Michigan is in worse shape for labor force participation than virtually, 30 or 40 other states. We're 41st in the country. So if we don't really invest, if we don't find the ways to invest, in 5-10 years from now, we're going to be looking back and I think wringing our hands and saying, gosh, we wish we would have. The other piece of that is, some of this, we have to look at whether this is one-time money or if this is sustainable surpluses, because we don't want to drive the state over a fiscal cliff in a few years. And so I'm really interested in talking to both the governor and Republicans about this.
Sandy, there were some critics of the governor believe that we are watching sort of a Jekyll and Hyde version of the governor. Early on, very interested in putting the clamps down on a lot of business activity in the state. Some people blame her for their business going out of business. And then we turn the corner toward an election, and all of a sudden things are much more open. She's interested in giving everybody, putting some more money in their mailbox. Is that just is it a narrative about the times in which we live and the way the pandemic has changed, or is that a fair criticism?
Yeah, I don't think it's a fair criticism of the governor. I mean, listen, I think we can look back over the last 2 years and point to, frankly, all 50 state governors and point to something that they probably wish they hadn't done. But following up on the question that you had to Kevin, yes, we've lost a lot of small businesses here in Michigan, but actually our new business starts in Michigan are at an all-time high. And this is a very different dynamic than occurred after the Great Recession, when we were upside down on business births and business deaths. And I think the other thing I would say about the governor's approach now is that a lot has happened over the last 2 years. I agree with her. The vaccines have changed the landscape. But also, we've kind of learned what works and what doesn't work. And obviously, people and businesses, each time there's a new wave, like we saw with Omicron, we've become a little bit more savvier with how to deal with this.
But Sandy, and I've only got a couple of seconds left. What does the fact that we still don't know what the world is going to look like here in 6 months, as much business as talent as we want to retain, we still don't even have a clear decision on whether or not people are going back to in-person work?
Yeah, and there's a survey that Deloitte and Fortune did actually just 2 weeks ago. It came out, and it shows that business leaders, this is a national figure, are equally optimistic and challenged, right? And they said that 2022 is going to look like 2021. It's going to be a really challenging year, but it's going to be a positive year, and that basically means that all of us, if we're in business or if we're just trying to manage our families, we have to continue to be resilient and flexible, and that we've really never been through this as a modern society. Even though we're going into year 3 of this, no one has all the answers. No one's going to get it all right. We're kind of on our own to some degree. We just have to be flexible and figure out what's best for our business and our families.
As I said on Flashpoint a couple of weeks ago, January 1st is a man-made construct. 2022 may not know that it's not supposed to be 2021. Friends, really great group, great conversation, and some really great points you've all given us to think about. Thanks so much, friends.